If you've ever seen a really cool thrift store find or vintage piece at the flea market, but you passed it up because it looked a little bit too beat up or dirty, then you're going to want to stick around because I'm sharing 10 of my favorite ways to easily and affordably restore some of your favorite home decor and furniture finds. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're new here, then you should know that I absolutely love thrifting and searching for secondhand home decor pieces. I just really love the eclectic and intentional vibe that it can bring to a home, which is why I'd say 90% of my home is actually decorated with things that I found at thrift stores, estate sales, garage sales, and flea markets. But in order to make these items feel a little bit more fresh and new, all while maintaining that pre-loved charm or vintage patina that we all know and love, I had to really learn how to clean and or restore these items without ruining them. So we're gonna get started with the first category of probably the most sought after secondhand items, as well as the ones that usually need the most love. And those are gonna be your metals. So we're talking brass, copper, chrome, and even pewter home decor pieces. For example, here are some of my favorite metal pieces around the home that I feel like just add a really interesting layer to the space. They can be reflective and sculptural and also just add another layer of color. It's hard to really replicate the texture that you get from metal, which is why I think a lot of people want to incorporate it into their space. Now, before we dive in here, I'm just going to cover a few things that we probably don't need to cover, but I'm just going to do it anyways. First, anytime you find something secondhand, I absolutely encourage you to take it home and spray it down with some Lysol and or a damp cloth or hot water and soap, depending on what the item is, and we'll get to that. But before you just grab any old materials underneath your sink or just start scrubbing something down with an abrasive brush or cleaner or baking soda, hold on a second and let's talk about the patina that is naturally occurring on so many of these really great secondhand items that we love. So I have discussed this on my channel before, but just as a really quick recap, patina is just that natural aging process that can happen on natural materials. Copper or bronze items can turn a little bit turquoise or green and just get that really interesting look and layer to them. Also, wood items can have some of those natural nicks and scratches in them that just give it like history and story. And because people have come to love and understand that a patina adds a lot of really interesting character to a piece, some of these bigger companies have been manufacturing patina, kind of adding their own scratching and discoloration on items that are brand new. And I feel like you can usually tell, so just use your best judgment. Secondly, there's also probably a few of you out there who are like, what is the difference between a patina and just dirty junk? And honestly, that's a fair question. I think if something can be easily repaired or the damage just adds a level of like character and style, then it's not junk, it just needs a simple repair or some perspective. This is all based on what you appreciate and what you want to see in your home. I personally don't want everything to look shiny and new. I want it to look like kind of storied and vintage. So I'm going to be looking for things that can be easily replaced or those damaged parts actually add something to that piece. And lastly, I think a patina that comes off with some light cleaning is just dirt and nothing to be celebrated. If you've cleaned and repaired a piece and it can stand proudly on its own with its natural wear and tear, then I think that's what most of us would consider a valuable patina. It's just that vintage vibe that most of us have grown to love and appreciate. Not that I don't seek out really pretty, shiny, brand new things, but it's all about layers, right? So items with a natural patina, no matter their origin, are just part of the layers that are giving a space depth and interest. Okay, so now that we've got that covered and you've got your piece and you've cleaned it and Lysoled it down and let it dry, let's remove some of that unsightly dirt or damage that's taking away from that natural patinated look that you might be going for. So a great example here is these really pretty copper candle holders I just recently picked up. They're in really great shape, but I just need to clean out some of this oxidized gunk on the inside because I just feel like it doesn't add to the piece. And I feel like cleaning it out would make the pair just feel a little bit more cohesive and naturally beautiful. I usually start with Goo Gone spray gel to remove any kind of adhesive price tags or just any kind of like sticky parts on a product. I usually spray it on and let it soak, and then whatever I'm trying to remove will come off super easily. And if you happen to always pick up home decor secondhand that's got Sharpie on it, the best way to remove it is with some Bon Ami powder. And then I like to just stretch out my steel wool sponge and only just cut a little tiny piece off of it, as you don't need much and it comes right off. This is also a great way to clean copper. This stuff is non-toxic and does not smell and takes off a basic layer of all that dirt and grime. And then I've talked about steel wool on this channel so many times because it's such an effective and delicate abrasive to use. But I want to call attention to some pieces of decor, especially metals, that have the label or the brand or the year engraved on the bottom or just stamped on there. And I just personally suggest keeping that on, as I think it gives the piece a little bit of value, history, and interest. However, for spots like this, I think what's best is some salt and lemon. It really just cleans it right up, but it is also very abrasive. So I really encourage you to use it sparingly and just keep checking in slowly to make sure that you're not really buffing away maybe some of that patina that you actually want on there. Because lemon and salt could really make this piece just look a little bit too pink and dull, and it might just lose some of that really interesting copper look. I think what a lot of people end up loving about copper is it's got that overall discolored or oxidized look, and it just feels like it's traveled through the decades. Next up, we have this really pretty pewter candlestick that I paired up with this vintage chrome IKEA candlestick as a sculptural moment on my desk over here. I know this one is pewter as it says so on the bottom, and with pewter, it's really important to not use anything abrasive as this is a very layered type of metal and finish, and we don't want to strip away the natural aesthetic. It's really easy to do so the best way to clean this is just a little bit of warm water and some soap and a soft rag. I think this really cleans up a lot of the dirt and grime and leaves the patina and gives it that dull kind of pewter look. And for this IKEA candlestick, I'm pretty sure it's made of like a stainless steel and it's chrome plated. I could shine it up really nicely with the powder form of Barkeeper's Friend and some quadruple zero steel wool. But I kind of like that these two go together in shape and end up being like a sculptural moment on the desk. So I surprisingly really want to keep the dull patina on this one. So I'm just going to wash it like the pewter one and just use a little Barkeeper's Friend to take off some of the spots. And for candlesticks in general, it's really important to just remove any of the old wax. And I feel like the best way is to just put it on a piece of wax paper on a cookie sheet and then put it in the oven at like 250, and all that wax will just melt off and it'll be so easy to wipe it off of the candlestick. But another method that I've used in the past is just putting the candlestick or container in the freezer, and you can use like a butter knife and just kind of pop it out once it's totally frozen. I think melting it though is the least abrasive way to get candle wax off of any metal candlestick. Once it looks fully melted, just take it out, wipe it down, let it cool, and then clean accordingly. For brass pieces, I absolutely love the more worn down, dull look. I really think the best look is where it's a combination between shiny and dull. I like how it's darker in the grooves and shinier on certain pieces. I think it just gives brass pieces like a really nice, cool vibe. I personally don't think I love a really shiny brass piece. It feels like it's leaning a little bit toward something that's too new or too gaudy, at least for my taste, where I'm preferring something a little bit more mid-century, modern, and Spanish. So I think I like that more worn look, but some of them, like these really pretty engraved Indian dishes, look so nice when they're shined up just a little bit, while the engravings maintain their darker tone to make them pop a little bit more. So I just used some of this Bon Ami powder with the quadruple zero steel wool and some gloves, and it shines up very nicely, but not too much. I'm scrubbing this so lightly. I'm basically just doing 100 passes over and over very softly. I'm not trying to make any kind of abrasion on the piece, and I'm also really not trying to get in the cracks because I kind of like the vibe that it gives when it's a little bit darker in the corners. I like to clean it softly and keep checking in on the finish before I just go in there and really scrub everything off. Just take it slow and in stages so you can preserve some of the patina that you like while shining and cleaning up some of the other areas. In my opinion, a really nice patinated finish is something that's a little bit flat and a little bit shiny, and this is probably just like my favorite part of the process of finding a piece and then taking it home and cleaning it, because I really get to stay in control of what the final piece is going to look like in my home. Okay, so far we've covered what is a patina and how to recognize it and what to do with it, how to use items like salt, lemon, Barkeeper's Friend, Bon Ami, and steel wool, and the differences between abrasive and non-abrasive items that could really ruin or enhance your piece, and how to remove the wax from some candlesticks out there. But I also want to talk about some other affordable and easy methods to clean up the metal on your furniture pieces. So the process is going to be just quite the same on a dresser or a coffee table that maybe has brass knobs or feet or something like that. You basically just would want to tape off the wood pieces with some yellow painter's tape. That tape is designed specifically to not ruin surfaces like removing paint or finishes once you take it off, and it'll also block any of these like chemicals and cleaners from getting on that wood finish and potentially ruining it as well. So I would just take your piece and put it on some plastic or paper towels, do the method maybe with some steel wool and Bon Ami, and you'll have a really great piece that looks a little bit better than what it was when you picked it up. let's move on to cleaning and restoring any kind of wood decor or furniture, as I feel like this can be a really daunting and intimidating task for a lot of people. First of all, it's important to mention there are tons of methods here depending on the wood or finish or piece, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to cover some of the most common ones that you'll encounter. So hopefully it goes without saying that if you find a piece of wood decor or furniture that's a little bit slick and shiny, it's probably covered in a finish, like whether it's paint or polyurethane. So it's usually safe to go in with some soapy hot water to clean off just like the dust and grime and residue. But if your piece feels like it's got a little bit more of a natural wood, or maybe the finish has come off over time, and I would be really careful to use soapy hot water, as you really don't want to expand the wood and ruin the piece. But let's say your piece is covered with that finish, whether it's a polyurethane or a shiny stain or varnish, and you really don't want to have to go in there and sand it and strip it and start it over from like the raw wood. Simple green and steel wool is a great combination for light paint removal when those typical go-tos like magic eraser just doesn't work. I use this method on my vintage dining chairs I got from Facebook Marketplace last year, and the combination of steel wool and simple green literally removed all of the paint and only a minimal amount of the finish. Which brings me to my next product, which is Restore a Finish. If for any reason you have to scrub hard enough to remove some of that grime with the finish, then this is a great product to use, especially if you don't have the time or skills or patience or interest in sanding down an entire piece and staining it from scratch. While fully restoring a piece in this method is probably the best way to get your preferred color and finish, Restore a Finish is just an easier method. You just have to choose a Restore a Finish color that matches the rest of the table or chair that you're working on instead of choosing a brand new color. Then, after lightly buffing the area in question with some steel wool and simple green, polish it with a few coats of the Restore a Finish, and you're going to be so surprised with how good it looks. It honestly saves you so much time. But for other pieces that just need a quick refresh and maybe they have a few scratches or water stains, or just maybe feel a little bit dull, my favorite easy method for this is using Howard's Feed and Wax. It's just an orange oil and beeswax mix that absolutely does wonders for like $10. This buffet I got with my dining set looked really beat up, but after applying just one layer of feed and wax, it looked totally refinished. And it has stayed looking like this as long as I just add a layer of it every couple months or so. I've been totally in the habit of now adding Howard's Feed and Wax to everything in my house whenever I remember to, because it just brings everything back to life so much better than any other wood product that I've used out there. I especially love to use it on items like my vintage teak wood coffee table, as it just really brings it back to life by magically erasing a ton of wear and tear that it's accumulated over the decades, and it really just highlights the color and gives it that natural patinated look. Beyond furniture, if you do pick up a lot of wood home decor, you can definitely wash it in soapy water, but you don't want to immerse it, and you definitely want to dry it thoroughly, as it can really make the wood expand and just totally ruin the piece. I especially use this method a lot for like wooden bowls and boxes, and I pick up a ton of these because I feel like they're just a little bit more stylish than having a bunch of baskets and bins around. But quite often when I find them secondhand, they're usually pretty beat up with a lot of scratches. So the best item I use for this is a Tibet almond stick. This thing is great for removing surface level scratches from wood boxes or wood frames, or even just the wood trim around your windows and doors in your home. It's truly amazing to see these scratches disappear in literally seconds. And better yet, it's less oily and waxy than something like Feed and Wax. It's kind of just an immediate repair, and it's so small and easy to use. It's just my favorite product, especially because it's only like $7 or so. I never feel deterred from buying a really interesting wood frame from the flea market or the thrift store, because I can always use this on those and make it look 10 times better. But if you do come across some wood frames that you really love and they have like deeper scratching or gouges, there's a few really great solutions you can use as well. First is using a fill stick. It's a wax-like substance in like a crayon shape that you can just rub into a deep scratch. And then you can either buff it away with a piece of 320 grit sandpaper or just wipe it off with a damp microfiber towel. I have to say these are a lot easier to use if you use like a heat gun and just kind of melt the wax down just a bit, so the wax buildup when you're really pressing it in isn't so high. But otherwise, it's really just easy to use as is. You might have to just sand back just a little bit more like I had to do on this side table. I also think the Mohawk white fill stick is just absolutely great for filling up the tiniest holes in your drywall or just filling in some cracks or cuts in some of your white furniture. I also really love to use something so easy, which is a stain marker. These are so great for simple touch-ups or just small areas, and you can get them in a ton of different colors. I showed you guys how I used the Minwax one to add some dimension to these half circle pieces I stained on my mid-century modern inspired trivet, but I've also had a chance to use this on desks or boxes because it really camouflages the damage. You can see here that I picked up this burlwood veneer jewelry box recently, and it has a ton of white nicks from just scratches and being thrown around, I assume. But by adding the marker in those lighter areas, this piece feels more like it has that patinated wear and tear versus just a scratched up box with veneer. And on this side table, instead of adding a layer of Restore finish after I sanded down the wax, I can just take a marker or a series of different colors of markers and blend them as I draw lines along the grain of the wood to really fill in what I sanded off and match it to the stain that's already there. I just use a microfiber towel to blend it in, and this seriously just takes a few minutes and it looks brand new. With painted pieces of wood, furniture, and decor, it's fairly easy to get a sample of that color at your local hardware store. And then instead of using a paintbrush every time you maybe need to touch it up, I really love using these paint syringes, as it's basically a really awesome touch-up pen. It's like a syringe and then has a tiny brush tip on the end that allows you to easily just touch up paint in small areas whenever necessary. You can also use this obviously on something like your baseboards or your doors or your walls after they've been nicked or something like that. Sometimes it's just such a hassle to take out the paint tray and the paintbrushes and have to wash out the paintbrushes. This is just such an easier approach because you could have a couple of them with some of the paint samples that you're using quite often and then just put the cap on and leave them as is. So to recap, for any type of wood, home decor, or furniture, my favorite method for removing a layer of gunk or paint scuffs is definitely going to have to be the simple green and steel wool. And to deepen or restore the color of an area that's been a little bit too scuffed up, my favorite product to use is Restore Finish or stain markers. And when you need to fill those really deep scratches or gouges, wax sticks are absolutely fantastic. And if you're just trying to cover up those surface level scratches or water stains or need to bring some more life into your piece, then Feed and Wax or the Tibet almond sticks are definitely my go-to. Let us know in the comments below if you have any tried and true methods for items like these. I know a ton of you left some really great information for chrome and tile cleaning on my last bathroom makeover video, so I just want to thank you guys for that because there were tons of really great tips. Also, if you want to see how I've decorated my home with mainly secondhand home decor and furniture, then you're definitely going to want to check out these two playlists here. Other than that, I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.